Hey, thank you so much if you viewed, liked, and subscribed to the last video. I truly appreciate your eyeballs. But seriously, thanks for liking and subscribing. So today I'm going to catch you up on the urban fantasy project that I'm working on. So it's still early days, so I have probably more to say now, and then I'll walk you through the process, and then there's going to be a lull while I do a lot of the writing, but I might show you some of that. I know some people have, expressed interest previously about, well, what do you do when you're actually writing? And to an outsider, it's going to look really boring. So I might do a time lapse of a day or something like that, just to show you what it looks like. I don't write all day. And since I burnt out so badly originally, I refuse to do the more than one session a day. So I'll do a morning session. And I used to do an afternoon and then an evening session as well, but that's not happening anymore. Oh, I just realized in the other video, I'm going to get better at doing this, I swear. Oh, I just realized the reason that I was mentioning author notes last time was because in the as a response to the author notes and me talking about my process and the difficulties and what I was doing to overcome the difficulty, people would email me and say that they've been inspired to write because if a dummy like me could do it, then anyone could, which is great. That's totally cool. So I think part of the reason for sharing some of this is if there's anything creative that you've been wanting to do and that you've been putting off for any number of reasons, this is kind of a little boost to say you can totally do it, and here's how I do this thing, and maybe there are some things that you glean from it, or maybe just watching it subconsciously, it starts to churn other things that you want to do. So that's what I was going to try to say before I got completely sidetracked and forgot why I was talking about author notes. And I have notes here. I have notes on the last video. I mean, when does she ever stick to a note? Bloody hell. All right. So I have here inspired to write urban fantasy because of the Dresden thing, totally. And the James Masters thing, obviously, as well. Let's get the James Masters thing out of the way so that that's a foundation that's been laid that I don't have to keep kind of going, let me tell you about James. Right. So James Masters did an amazing job, the audio. He's inspired me to want to do voice stuff. You may know, I've done a little bit of screen acting back when I was in London, and part of acting training is the voice work. And so when I fast forward, 5-10 years later, and I start listening to the Dresden Files on audio, he just blew me away. And I think the reason, one of the big reasons, obviously the stories are amazing and Jim Butcher is great and so on and so forth. They are really great stories. More on that very soon. I have stuff to say. A huge chunk of that has got to, the popularity and the spread of it has got to do with the narration and the work that James Masters did. And so I got very interested. So obviously I'd seen him in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So first of all, whenever I listen to Dresden Files, I'm not seeing it as Jim Butcher describes, because I think he's meant to be really tall and dark-ish hair and a little bit butch or something. I don't know, because I can't process those things. And maybe this is the same for a lot of folks. I would love if you have the same thing when you listen to it, please tell me. I just want to know that I'm not alone in this. But anyway, in my head, Harry Dresden is basically Spike. And he's, with the blonde hair, slicked back, and the kind of Cockney accent and the long leather trench coat. He's Spike. He will always be Spike. It doesn't matter how many times Butcher puts in the description, Harry is, it's never going to stick. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So anyway, so that was a bit of a jarring experience watching television version of it, which I don't think that did very well. Anyway, I stopped watching it, but I am periodically I will go looking for the next Dresden Files audio because I just want to be in that world. It's just so cool. And we're going to talk about why it's cool and why we think it's cool. And then hopefully how to build other cool things. But that's one of my inspirations. So anyway, I went looking for insight into what made James Master's performance so epic. So I've watched a few of his things on Cameo. A writing friend of mine put me onto that, and like the dude knows his stuff. Like he was doing an expose, like a masterclass on Macbeth from beginning to end, and like the guy really knows the craft of acting and everything to do with it. So then I also went looking at things that he'd said at conferences, because conferences they go on and they have to say a lot. They get asked a lot of questions, and a lot of them are the same thing over and over again, and they've got to find fresh ways to talk about it. So I watched a bunch of that, and I think it was in one of the conferences. It might have been an interview, might have been him interviewing Butcher, perhaps. But he talked about, he must have been on stage, because he talked for a while about how he went for the job. They kept making him do lines again and do lines again and do lines again. And he was like, oh shit, I'm failing at this. And this is hard work. And oh my God, they're perfectionist. Or how am I ever going to get through this? And eventually they broke for lunch and he went away. He came back and they kind of cheered. I think they cheered when he came back, because no one had ever lasted that long and then come back after lunch. And I think, like, if you just talk about how he approached acting, I think that level of tenacity to get it right and to do the best job on the job is one of the reasons that has made it so spectacularly brilliant. Obviously, he brings all of his experience and like ability to do voices and range to the role as well. He's not just reading off, right? But I think it gives you a little bit of like insight. It helped me understand, okay, what is it that's needed to craft something as awesome as this? So obviously you need the words, first of all, and then you need that kind of performance and dedication to the performance. So anyway, this was all like churning in my head for maybe the last 4 or 5 years while I've been doing other things. And I think there was a combination of stuff. And I started to realize that, someone asked me to do a voiceover for animation, and I said yes. And he sent me I think part of it is the accent. So this was obviously for an American market. So he sent me like a portion of the script. And so I did a test thing and sent it back. And obviously, like for animation, like cartoony stuff, they're going to alter the voice. So I was kind of like chill about it, and I gave him variations and stuff for different lines. And he came back and he was really encouraging, and I'm like, oh shit. And I was like, oh well, like maybe there is room for me to do something of that ilk. So first of all, like when you're writing, you can't really effectively do anything else. Like even just writing is like burnout territory. And as an independent author, you're doing marketing as well and social media and and it's a lot. Even if you've got a team around you, it's a lot. So so the idea of like doing audio narration on top of that, so like I don't know, my books would probably show up at around 10 hours worth of finished product. So multiply that by at least 4 or 5 to do like production, and then like to record it, and then you've got to do post-production and so on and so forth. And it's a faff. I'd ruled loads of people had said, do your own things because blah, 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 accent. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. There's no way I'm going to do that. But then I started thinking, but what if I could do that? And then like with AI happening as well, and how you can like do text to speech, at a high level concept, the idea of like feeding your manuscript into a computer to put it into a narration is great. However, there are problems with it in that you have an AI talking. It's never going to get like the pronunciation right. Like I have an app for listening to PDFs, like information that I want to just like consume really fast, like reports and whatnot. But anyway, it's not great, and it's not a great user experience. And I was like, yeah, but what if I like did a chapter and I could just like put that out to Patreon and just do it for fun and practice and hone my inner James Masters and like maybe get some kind of traction along the path to the kind of mastery that he has over the art, just for the sake of, you know, doing it for not because I want to be a narrator or anything. And so that got me thinking along the lines of like, oh my God, like I could do this whole thing and like the whole urban fantasy thing and do like little snippets of narration as I go as part of this thing. And all of a sudden you've got like a whole bunch of stuff to stick on the Patreon. And or I could put it on YouTube as well. And that would just be kind of fun. Like, I feel like it would give me more traction on the project than just writing. And it's given me an outlet to talk about the process and stuff as well. So I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And I mean, that's the predominant reason to do these things, right? So that's why I'm doing this kind of thing. Like the audio narration is the thing. Oh, right. So the other part of that was like maybe down the line, I could like train an AI to speak like I do. And so I could like record the first book myself, for instance, and then AI could take over for the rest of the series if it ever gets to that point and if it's ever good enough and if the process is easy enough. Like I've tested some of these early versions of the AI text-to-speech, text-to-voice, what do they call it? Text-to-speech, TTS. And the amount of faffing around you have to do. And like you can upload it and it breaks it into segments and you got to like do each segment. And you may as well just record it damn self at this point, unless you're trying to stay anonymous or something. Like that's the only reason to use AI at this point. Anyway, we'll see. I'm sure things will improve, you know, 100-fold in the next 10 minutes. We'll revisit that. But I know that some of you guys will only listen to them on audio. And I totally get that because like I find reading text hard as well, like to process it and for it to go in. I don't know. I just feel like it's more of a big deal if you have to do it and less. It's more work for the enjoyment of the story. So anyway, so that's where I'm at with that. Okay. So having got to that point of like, oh my God, I could write my own kind of Dresden-esque kind of thing. I remembered Jim Butcher's story, how he wrote it. He wrote the original Stormfront as like a short, I think, as an assignment in class in order to prove to his teacher that what she was talking about was BS. And, you know, so she was talking about tropes and like formulaic kind of approach, which everything's formulaic. Oh my God. Like human brains are built in a certain way. And if you know how to hit the beats in the right way, to hit those kind of things that the audience is looking for, then that's the definition of creating a successful series. And so he was like kind of disparaging about it, but he was like, I'm going to write this and just follow all her rules completely to the letter so that I can show her that like this is bullshit. Obviously, like the rest is history. It was so good that he then went on like to turn it into a full novel, and then the novel took off and everyone loved it. And you know, he's built this amazing series out of it, and it's his entire career, and it's just epic. So anyway, that's a really cool starter story. And so I'm like, who is this professor? Who is she? Like, more importantly, what's her formula? So I went looking for it and I found it. She wrote the book, The Fantasy Fiction Formula. The name is Deborah Chester. And I think it was Ohio University where she was teaching the course. Needless to say, I started to devour her book. I've got the other one here that you could tell that I'm into it. She's got the fiction formula has a bunch of exercises in it. It's a book. It's like it's a craft book that you read sections of, and then you go away and do exercises and stuff. This is a workbook, and it's got more exercises in it. I got them both because, well, lots of reasons. So anyway, the first book I'm currently working through. And I'm listening to it and I'm finding that it's so good and so dense in terms of the material, that's the insight and the rules that it lays out. Rules is a strong word, but the formula that it lays out, that I've had to go back and use Kindle and highlight it so that I can then pull my own notes from it and so on and so forth. So I'm partway through that. I'm at the same time working on the very last exercise that she gave. I think it was in that book, because I'm working on some exercises in this concurrent, where she says go through the Game of Thrones or the first chapter of the Game of Thrones, except I'm not doing the Game of Thrones. The point is to go and find where they're doing certain things, like opening up loops and ideas and curiosities and stuff that makes you want to keep reading. So like it's basically a masterclass in how to keep the reader page turning. And I'm like, oh my god, this is genius. And like sometimes you do it just because you have a sense of story, but like when you go through and like you color underline or color highlight the different things, so like here's where he puts a plate in the air, here's where he drops the plate, so you make someone curious and then you satisfy their curiosity. So you want to be able to track all those things. Now when you're writing, and when you're writing fast, like what I was having to do with the publishing a book a month, you haven't got time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but you're kind of doing it a bit like on the hoof. And so I'm like, well, if I can get used to just like mapping this with my brain, like the brain's really good, it'll absorb it from doing the exercises as an experience, and then you'll be able to do it better as you're writing. And then, like with this, what I'm planning to do is allow myself time to go back and like do rewrites. Like when I say rewrites, I mean like adding bits and tweaking and layering stuff in, which is what most trad pub authors do, which you just don't have time to do if you're just publishing for KDP in fiction, right? So anyway, that's what's going on with that. If you're interested in hearing a little bit more about the exercises, I can talk about those. But other than that, I think next time I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process and the world and the characters that as I'm developing them. So I'll show you my system as well. So I'm using Obsidian to keep track of like all my notes for everything, for all the different studies that I'm doing. But it's turned out that it's really good for like keeping track of all my notes and separating them out and linking them and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. So if you're into that kind of thing, I'll be doing a video on that soon as well. Okay, so that's it for now. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything in particular that you want me to do a deeper dive into, and I will get onto that in subsequent videos. Okay, that's it for now. Bye.